What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to my channel. I am your lovely host, Megan, here at the Astro Queen. If you are just now coming here for the first time, we use information from celestial bodies to help us gain a better understanding of our favorite celebrities, world events, but most importantly, our damn selves. So come on in, have a seat, hit that subscribe button on your way in because you know you want to, okay? So without further ado, today I am going to do a natal chart read, and maybe we can dip into a little bit of the synastry between both Drake and Kendrick Lamar. So unless you've been hiding under a rock, okay, the two have been engaging in what will probably go down as like the biggest or one of the biggest rap battles in modern history. So for the past week or so, the internet has been in shambles, honey. They've been dropping diss tracks on each other. And that's just really what it is. So y'all drop in the comment section. Let me know. Are you team Drake? You team Kendrick? Or neither? Are you just a spectator like myself? Even though, I don't really care for Drake as a person. I do think he's corny. But everybody got their ways about them. To which, I would definitely love to discuss that in today's video. So specifically, I want to get into the different allegations that have been tossed back and forth because, it's been getting real messy, real messy. So in one corner, you have Kendrick Lamar, who really popped all of this off with his not control. Well, yeah, you could say the control verse from back in the day, but in more recent times, he had to like that verse when he did the song with Metro Boomin, Future, blah, 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 right? Through the shots, I guess the warning shots at Drake came out with his own diss record. I think it was like 50 push-ups, drop and give me 50, whatever, okay? Don't quote me. Do your own research, okay? But then Drake responded. Kendrick responded again. Then he responded again. And then he responded again. Record after record after record, with the most recent diss track being the Not Like Us, very much a bop. And so in all of these diss records, he's really, in my opinion, regurgitating a lot of the things that have been said about Drake on the internet for some time now. And I noticed this when it comes to all celebrities for the most part and public figures. There will be a lot of rumors, a lot of things going on in the background that a lot of people know about, but nobody in terms of like the public, the general public, really acknowledges these things until like much later on, right? Until shit hits the fan. So the allegations about Drake and his infatuation with younger girls, he really dug into Drake for being a culture vulture. Drake is biracial Canadian that was very much raised by his white mama. And y'all know the biracials with the white mamas hit very differently. Very differently. They hit very differently. I won't be elaborating further. So, all of these different slugs, right? Kendrick is just really throwing them at Drake. I think he even alluded to the fact that Drake had another love child, like secret love child. Everybody knew that Drake had a secret child that he was actually exposed for hiding back when he was beefing with Pusha T. So Kendrick is like, okay, he has another secret love child who is a daughter, allegedly. And then Drake was saying that Kendrick beat his wife or something like that. So once again, allegations flying. Now, the purpose of today's reading is to take a look at both individuals' natal charts to further examine the validity or even the plausibility of these claims, these allegations that are being made towards one another. And then maybe we'll get into a little bit of synastry between the two as well. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing to understand when it comes to both Drake and Kendrick from an astrological point of view, Drake, who was born on October 24th, 1986 at 2:31 a.m. in Toronto, Canada, has his sun at the 0 degree of Scorpio, right? And then you have Kendrick, born on June 17th, 1987 at 3:04 p.m. in Compton, California, whose sun would be at the 26th degree of Gemini. Now, Gemini and Scorpio actually form a quincunx to one another. And quincunxes in astrology are technically categorized as minor aspects, but in terms of impact, can absolutely be everything but minor, okay? They can impact you in a major way. Quincunxes can point towards, mess, where things can be very messy or where things can kind of get drug out. It can point towards like disagreements and more so like conflicts that do have the potential to be solved, but where you have to do a lot of tweaking and where one would have to make a lot of adjustments. These two energies do not naturally mesh. They can also complicate things or speak to where there could be a certain irritant, even in terms of two people, right? Where there could be a nagging, prolonged issue, something that isn't addressed but has to be addressed in order to function properly. And so within this context, I would absolutely attribute it to the fact that perhaps Drake and Kendrick have not really been feeling each other for a very long time, right? Or where this may have been an issue, an ongoing, once again, prolonged issue, but not necessarily a major one, but one that could have definitely, once again, been just like a nagging problem in the background, right? Or something that could have been very annoying, right? Or Drake looking at Kendrick as being like an annoying problem, like a thorn in his side, or even vice versa. And then tensions eventually just come to a head. But there's going to have to be a lot of readjustments and reconfiguration that has to be done and accounted for in order for both parties to coexist, in a nutshell. And when you have two signs like Scorpio and Gemini, they form a quincunx because both signs are in large part centered on mind fucking. Scorpio and Gemini are the two signs, the two biggest mind fucks of the zodiac, respectfully. On one end, Gemini, which is ruled by the planet Mercury, which of course deals with your mental and cognitive faculties anyway. Geminis, especially if on the darker end of the spectrum and unevolved, are really big tricksters. These are people who are always, plotting and planning, people who could always be in a standpoint where they're trying to outsmart the next person or outwit the next person. This is why technically Gemini rules the magician card in the tarot deck for all of my tarot girlies and guys, right? So, look at Gemini as one of those signs that, always has to be a step ahead. And that's so Kendrick, even in like the planning and execution of this whole rap battle from, by the time Drake dropped one song, Kendrick had two in the chamber, right? So everything about this, the way that this whole rap beef has played out, definitely symbolizes this quincunx to me. And then in the other corner where you have Scorpio, Scorpio is the sign of psychology, okay? Although Scorpio is co-ruled by planets Mars and Pluto, it still has this mental kind of undertone to it, in the sense that, once again, Scorpio is all about depth. It's all about psychology. It's all about probing, digging, investigating, right? Going beneath the surface. This is why you see Scorpio placements and energy in the charts of a lot of detectives, and things like that, which I thought was very interesting, because word on the street was Drake was doing a lot of digging and investigating on Kendrick, to find dirt on Kendrick. And apparently that's the approach that he takes whenever he's in these rap battles. So whoever his opponent is, you can trust and believe that he's, paying people off to find dirt on you, which is very Scorpio, right? Very, very Scorpio. Both signs do carry the capacity to be very calculated, especially when you get into dark side of Scorpio. The dark side of Scorpio wants to figure you out, okay, so that they can ultimately gain the upper hand. For Scorpio, the name of the game is power and domination. So to kind of have that upper hand on you, to overpower you and to dominate you. So it's like I see the similarities there. However, when they go up against one another, you're in for some mess. You're in for some mess. And therein lies the entire point of the quincunx. It's messiness. It's a messy situation. Okay? It can be. So there's that. Now, if we go to Drake's natal chart, something else that stood out to me was the fact that he has his ascendant at a very critical degree. If you've been on my channel for a minute, you know that I always preach about the 29th degree. The 29th degree in astrology is known as the anaretic degree. Some people refer to it as the crisis degree, or once again, just a critical degree. And what it signifies is that, number one, with the ascendant dealing with your sense of identity, like yourself, even like your physical body. Number one, it tells me that Drake he has a lot of identity issues going on, right? The ascendant at the 29th degree of Leo can definitely produce an identity crisis, specifically as it pertains to the way that this person kind of engages in the entertainment industry. Leo is the sign of Hollywood. So the way that the person views themselves versus how, they show up in a professional capacity or, just within Hollywood, there's a lot of conflict there, especially with the numbers 2 and 9 juxtaposing one another. There's a lot of racial issues that could be tied into that, that definitely, reinforce those identity problems, which, it's not a secret. A lot of people can see, Stevie Wonder can see that Drake clearly struggles with a lot of, identity issues. Once again, he is biracial with a white mom. However, he did not grow up in, Black culture. I've seen biracial people who maybe, let's say if you have a Black parent and a white parent, for example, maybe they were socialized with their Black family. You can always tell who grew up with what side. You can always tell. Aubrey Graham actually grew up with his mother, once again, in a white Jewish community, not even American, right? Like when you venture outside of America and the politics of race outside of America, completely different. So, as a person, to go from that to one of arguably the biggest hip hop acts, which is a very Black American art form, there is some cognitive dissonance that tends to come into play. This could deal with there being a lot of crisis and issues with how he sees himself. Once again, with how other people perceive him as well. He has his chart ruler, which would be the sun, in his third house of Scorpio, forming a conjunction to Pluto. So this could definitely represent him reinventing himself. And everybody knows that when it comes to Drake, you really don't know what you're going to get. It just depends on the era that he feels like he's in terms of how he tends to show up. You could even look at Leo as a sign that deals with like marketing, how you choose to market yourself with Leo at the 29th degree on the ascendant. Like there are major issues with how he chooses to brand and market himself. And a lot of times they're all stemming from a lot of these like identity issues, right? And with that Sun Pluto conjunction, once again, he is very intentional about the way that he goes about this. You know, this is the same man who, for a good amount of time, once again, he went from being like this Jewish, clean-cut guy at the very, very, very beginning of his career. Then he kind of morphed into like an islander, because the nigga was saying teens at every moment. I'm like, teens, you know, he would do like the Jamaican accent, the Caribbean accent kind of thing. Then, you know, he was from Houston, Atlanta, Vegas. He spent a lot of time in Houston. A lot of his music and his personality, it's almost like he was like cosplaying. Like he cosplays different parts of the Black American diaspora in terms of like, or even just the Black diaspora period, really. You know, then the next moment, he was from Atlanta, and Kendrick did a really good job in like calling all of this out. So all of this could absolutely be detected within the natal chart, okay? That Sun-Pluto conjunction in the third house of Scorpio also, you know, just speaks to the fact that Drake is the type of person, or can be a type of person, like I said, who's very calculated, very intentional. All of this is happening in his third house alongside his Venus at the 18th degree of Scorpio. Now, this could also even speak to a lot of his dark-sided tendencies, too, even as it pertains to women or the things that he's into, right? Scorpios, you know, another way that this sign is expressed archetypically, especially when we start getting into the lower vibrational qualities of it. A lot of it is, you know, predicated upon like temptation and the desire to do wrong. Now, I'm not saying all Scorpios are bad people, of course not. But the darker side of Scorpios, people who are really not evolved like that, or who don't do a lot of work on themselves, it's very easy for them to fall into temptation and want to live an existence that is a lot more like underhanded. Because think about what Scorpio represents. Scorpio deals with crime. Scorpio deals with taboo, right? Things that are taboo, things that are forbidden, things that, once again, people can't really see up front, or things that make people uncomfortable. And so I also think, too, a lot of, when you listen to Drake's music, a lot of his fascination with being a thug, and even though he's the furthest thing from it, right? And when you listen to how his music has evolved over time, like, it's like there's this fascination with being in alignment with, like I said, like gangsters, really, you know, even when it boils down to like Jay Prince and his affiliation with different like Black Americans and stuff like that. I wouldn't be surprised if he was tangled up in, you know, organized crime. And this is just, you know, speculative on my part, right? But with that Sun, Pluto, Venus hookup in his third house of Scorpio, like, this is somebody who could definitely surround themselves with, whether it be nefarious people, or, like I said, maybe they could be kind of criminal minded, or, you know, have a really dark-sided streak, you know, or be into some things that could really make people uncomfortable. Even when it comes to his sexual preferences, his sex life, Scorpio literally is the sign of sex. Something else that's important to mention, right? With his Leo his ascendant at the 29th degree of Leo. Leo also rules children, y'all. So somebody who has that ascendant at the critical degree like that, this is absolutely going to bring a lot of high pressure situations, a lot of issues with children. I would even argue women as well, but definitely with children. And then that's also reinforced with his Sun conjoined to Pluto in the third house of Scorpio. I'm not going to lie. That's a very predatory conjunction. Now, am I saying everybody with the Sun and Scorpio conjoined to Pluto is a predator? No, that's not what I'm saying. But I don't know. Do the facts align in this situation? They align. And the third house can deal with school-age children, like teenagers and shit. So, I mean, y'all do the math, y'all. Y'all do the math. Do the math. Now, his ascendant at that 29th degree of Leo also speaks to having major daddy issues. Everybody knows Drake's father was not involved in his life for a good little minute. once again, even with that Sun-Pluto conjunction, there could still be resentment towards the father, and things of that nature. It could also deal with having a father who is involved in some, shady shit too. Now, Drake also has his Cancer moon. Now, the Cancer moon is really what I would make responsible for Drake's reputation for being this kind of soft, wussy, lover boy, ladies man, right? And either you really like him for it or you don't. But, it can make him somebody who takes things very personally, make him very sensitive. All that's that Cancer moon. Him getting his abs done, right? There was a whole BBL Drizzy where he went... The BBL Drizzy joke that stems from him, getting plastic surgery to correct his abs and his chest, I think. Which, interesting fact, Cancer and the moon, right? Because the moon is dignified in Cancer, both govern the stomach. They rule the stomach area, for sure. So I thought that was interesting as well. The fact that those are like problem areas on his body, right? Areas on the body that he would eventually want corrected. And Scorpio, for what it's worth, is also the sign of surgery. So you do see a lot of Scorpios, both male and female, but of course, more often in females where they can just go crazy with the plastic surgery. Not even going to hold you. But with him having that moon trining Pluto, not only could that signify him undergoing some kind of cosmetic procedure to his stomach, like the abdominal area or even his chest, it could point to where, yeah, a good doctor. I mean, at the very least, he got a good doctor. It looked good. Maybe he's satisfied with his results, which is really all that matters. Now, with Scorpio, once again, ruling all things underhanded, things that we can't see, things that can be kept hidden, right? Even traumas and things of that manner, having his sun, Pluto, Venus, all in that third house of Scorpio, also introduces the idea or the concept of Drake having a lot of, or maybe having experienced a lot of like traumatic experiences, even while he was in school. And this trauma could include, but not be limited to, things like even bullying, especially when you consider the fact that his Pluto is squaring his Mars in that sixth house of Aquarius. So I could definitely see him being treated like a dweeb. Give me your lunch money, nigga. Not to mention, sidebar, Mars square Pluto is a quintessential grape aspect, if you catch my drift. And once again, this is speculative. I'm not calling him a grapist. But what I am saying, especially with his Mars in Aquarius, if you've been on my channel for some time now, you know archetypically Aquarius, the lower vibrational expression of Aquarius is a PDF. Once again, reading between the lines, y'all. PDF ophilia. Okay? It could give a person some very wayward, especially with Mars in Aquarius, it can give you some very wayward sexual desires. And then the sixth house deals with grooming. So once again, when you square that Mars in the sixth house of Aquarius with his Pluto in that third house of Scorpio, the idea of even grooming and being predatory towards school age girls, like, y'all catch, you picking up what I'm putting down? You picking up what I'm putting down? And I know, like clockwork, is going to be people in the comments like, well, Megan, you're so negative. Oh, this is horrible. You're so biased and negative. I'm reading it for what it is. Now, I will say, now as it pertains to children, taking it back to the children thing, Drake also has his sun forming a sextile to his Neptune, I believe. And that Neptune is in the fifth house. The fifth house does real children, fifth house of Capricorn. Now, this aspect actually works in his favor in the sense of allowing him to keep children hidden. So if he does have a whole harem of kids, like, he's able to successfully kind of keep that a secret, keep it hush hush, keep it in the background. So there's that. There was also a lot of talk about him texting these younger women. The third house can rule text messages, your phone. So once again, doesn't help that he has Sun, Pluto, Venus in that third house of Scorpio. Scorpio, the lower octave of it could also deal with like harassment as well. Like, it's so many It's so many different places we could go with this, y'all. Then he has that Venus at the 18th degree of Scorpio. That could be a critical degree too, because the number 18 can produce like hypersexuality. So like where Drake is like a straight up freaked out the frame, which is not a crime in and of itself, right? But once again, the darker side expression of this placement can be very depraved. It can get very deviant. Scorpio is one of the signs of deviancy, sexual deviancy. So you can't make this up. And some other famous examples of this would be, I see this in a lot of celebrities who get caught up in stuff and they have like Scorpio on the South Node. So your R. Kelly's, your Trey Songz. But even if we're talking about, Scorpio suns, like I said, that Sun-Pluto conjunction, then Venus and Scorpio. So it's a lot, right? And then he also has his Mercury at the 24th degree of Scorpio sitting in his 4th house. So that could also deal with him, texting, especially when Mercury conjoined to Venus, texting women in private or, where people could, dig through his messages and potentially come up with stuff. Like he's the type of person, he got a lot of skeletons in his closet. That's another way to look at that, especially when it comes to women and stuff like that, and because Scorpio, especially Sun, conjoined to Pluto, but even Venus at the 18th degree of Scorpio it could come with like abuse and stuff like that too, or even threatening or intimidation, which I thought was very interesting, especially with him having that Venus in Scorpio conjoined to his 4th house Mercury in Scorpio, where there have been women who flat out said like straight up, nah, Drake intimidated me. He sent his goons to my house, which would be that 4th house Venus Mercury 4th house conjunction. He sent like thugs to my house to come intimidate me. And it's usually tied to like, once again, children. And a specific example that I'm using is Johnny Blaze. So if y'all are not familiar with Johnny Blaze, she's like she was known as a stripper initially from Houston, really big stripper, really big, like one of the original IG model girlies. And she used to mess with Drake back in the day. And I think she said something to the effect of like, she had gotten pregnant by him and like he would force the women. A lot of women have said that Drake had forced them to get abortions. And I think in her case, she didn't cooperate with that, or maybe she did an interview, which is also very Venus conjoined to Mercury, that could deal with like having, him dealing with women who probably would do interviews. But with that conjunction there, especially in Scorpio, if you say something he doesn't like, he's going to press you. You know what I'm saying? And with him being corny, he probably is not going to do it himself. But once again, with that Scorpio stellium, especially in his 3rd house, I wouldn't be surprised if he had other people doing that bidding for him kind of thing, right? I'm going to throw some money at the situation and y'all beat these bitches up. Like she said that he had goons come and I think they attacked her or threatened her, whatever. Also with the Sun ruling children as well, and then him having that Leo at the 29th degree on his ascendant. All of this in tandem with that Sun Pluto Scorpio hookup could deal with him like forcing women to get abortions too. So either he has a bunch of children out there, or he could have had children, but like the women got abortions, and it just kind of speaks for itself. Okay. Now, there are also a couple of other things to keep in mind as it pertains to just very telling aspects within Drake's natal chart. For instance, he does have Jupiter in that 7th house of Pisces. Now, the 7th house can deal with open enemies. It could also deal with, the relationships that he has with different people, right? People in his circle, to a certain extent, like socially. And so even with that being said, his Jupiter is squaring his Uranus and his 4th house of Sagittarius, which automatically can produce there being shocking information divulged about his personal life. Another aspect that could kind of echo similar sentiments would be his 11th house Cancer moon squaring both of his nodes, but predominantly that Libra South node in the 3rd house too, making a lot of his private affairs public, especially when it comes to women, and his relationships with women. But just in regards to living in his truth, being who he is, as an Aries North node, especially with that North node in his 9th house, it is critical that Drake lives in accordance to his truth, and really has to, in this lifetime, learn more about like who he is as a person, which is why whenever he straddles too much in that Libra South Node bag of like trying to fit in, doing what other people are doing, caring a lot about what other people think of him. All of this is Libra South Node conditioning. And then when you add that to the third house, and then in tandem with that Venus Mercury conjunction and Scorpio, the energy signature can speak to an individual who cares a lot about public perception, and somebody who does a really good job at studying other people, especially even more so with all of that Scorpio energy there in his third house, Sun, Pluto, yada yada, where he could study people. He studies these different demographics of people and different concepts when it comes to music, and he can embody it, but that's not who you are. It's not authentic. It's not who you are. It's a performance. By the way, Leo is the sign that rules performance. So the fact that he has his ascendant at the 29th degree of Leo could also even speak to a large part of who he is and how he shows up and what he puts on to be a public act. It's an act. He was an actor first. Okay? He was an actor first. But once again, Jupiter squaring Uranus in that fourth house of Sagittarius, definitely a lot of shocking details being made public. He has that same Jupiter squaring his Chiron at the 20th degree of Gemini. That could also deal with a lot of people like exposing him to like people talking, doing a lot of talking. And it just so happens that Kendrick Lamar's Chiron, which is also in Gemini, along with his sun, also square this same Jupiter. Okay, and so this is like a double up effect in the sense that Kendrick is the one sounding the alarm. If Geminis don't do nothing else, they gonna talk. So that Sun Chiron conjunction on Kendrick's end, squaring Drake's Jupiter, that's him sounding the alarm on Drake, putting Drake on full Front Street. Then you got Kendrick Lamar's moon, which is in Pisces, forming a conjunction. I know it's in Pisces. I believe it's forming a conjunction to that Jupiter. So even more so, like you could even look at this as him having intel, Kendrick having intel on Drake, which is, been made public in turn, or that's what he alleged, right? I got somebody from your camp that's feeding info. And once again, with Drake having that Jupiter in Pisces in the seventh house, especially afflicted like that, right? Squaring Uranus, squaring Chiron, he absolutely 100% needs to question the people around him. There could be a lot of phony go-between people, right, who are definitely, even disloyal. So, there's that. Some other things I wanted to run down, once again, with Drake being in Aries North Node, especially in the ninth house. Aside from living in his truth, he is ultimately going to be put through situations that force him to have to defend himself, to once again have to learn himself. And when I say defense, this could be figuratively or literally. At the time of me recording this, it was made public there was a shooting at his home, which is very interesting. The same Aries North Node, Aries rules gunfire, by the way, does form a square once again to his moon, which deals with the home and Cancer. So that could signify that shooting at his home. So where eventually there could be situations brought to his front door where, where he may have to fuck around and worry about his own safety and protection. So if I were Drake, I'd be real careful and very mindful of the people that I have around me. That's critical. And anytime you spend too much time dwindling and dwelling in that South Node energy and not really being authentic, Aries is also very much authenticity based. And to be fair, Kendrick Lamar also has this same lunar nodal placement. However, I just feel like in terms of the battle of the North Nodes, Kendrick Lamar definitely beat Drake to the punch. I mean, he got out Aries North Node, if you ask me. But I will say, and it also depends on how you look at it, because Libra could be the opponent. Libra could be, if you're talking about people with Libra on the South Node, can find themselves in situations where they pose as the rival, the opponent to someone. So even if that's the lens in which you would like to view the situation through, Kendrick Lamar dwelling in his Aries North Node, and it kind of setting off this kind of domino effect in regards to Drake having to defend himself. And, these are things that can they can escalate to the point of, either him having to defend his own name, which is very Aries North node, literally or figuratively, or defending himself, defending his home, hence that square to his Cancer moon. Now, some people are speculating that this shooting is contrived, which that's a different video for a different day. This video is long enough, we can look into that, but I digress. Now, something else that's important to understand, that in its highest form, Scorpio deals with collaboration. Hence why Drake has had records and really created a career out of working with so many different people. In its lowest form, Scorpio deals with vampirism. It's parasitic. It can suck a person, a place, a thing dry. And I would argue that Drake, and a lot of people who are critical of Drake, feels like he much more aligns with the second description of or expression of that Scorpio energy of being a vampire. You come and you suck cultures dry, you suck people dry, the people that feature and collab with you suck their clout up, and then you move on. And for personal gain at that. Very scorpionic, very dark-sided Scorpio. Okay. So, with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and end this video here. This is part 1. I will create a part 2. In part 2, we will be getting into Kendrick Lamar's chart, as well as more of the shared synastry between these two. So in the meantime, y'all drop in the comment section. Let me know what you think about this chart. What do you think about Drake's natal chart? What do you think about the rap beef? Whose side y'all on? Do you got a side? I would love to hear it. Are you familiar with any of these aspects or placements? Sound off in the comment section below. I love y'all, and I will catch y'all later. Bye.